New Mutants takes a great concept and a decent layout and fumbles it with unnecessary character changes. Yo, I'm Eric July, aka Young Ripper 59. Because of this virus crap, there aren't many movies coming out in theaters these days, but after being pushed back an endless amount of times, the New Mutants movie finally came out. I, of course, went to see it, considering that this is a comic book movie after all, and here's the review. As I have to mention, like I always do many times before, I do not do spoiler-free reviews, so of course there will be spoilers. And hopefully, if you enjoy this video, you'll become a subscriber and more importantly, turn on all notifications so the YouTube will notify you when I drop a video. We also stream a lot here over on the channel, so before we dive in, all right, bro, so you may have seen some commenters on my videos with these cool little badges next to their names. These are my members, or Macs as we call them. The badges change depending on how long you've been a Mac. For as little as 99 cents a month, you can become a Mac and get access to a bunch of cool emotes that you can use during our crazy live streams. There are currently 4 different tiers of memberships, and one even gets you 50% off in the merch store. For more information on becoming a Mac, head over to my YouTube homepage and click the join button near the top of the page. All right, New Mutants. For those of you that are new around here, we always have to compare and contrast the characters and the stories surrounding them when it comes to the comic books. It gives you context, and plus that's the whole damn point of calling a movie New Mutants. But the original New Mutants series by Chris Claremont popped up in the 1980s. The comic was the debut of many of the characters you see in the New Mutants movies, such as Sam Guthrie, who is Cannonball, Danny Moonstar, Wolfsbane, and Sunspot. All of these characters appear in the original New Mutants comic as well as the series. The only ones that didn't really have a big debut in that series was Cecilia Reyes, because she isn't even a thing until like the late 1990s. And Magic, who appeared as a child almost a decade prior in a giant-sized X-Men. We knew about her before, and then we learned, of course, more about her when she did join the New Mutants later on in the series. The original New Mutants were youngsters being sort of looked after by OG Professor X, and Stevie Hunter was their teacher. During the first issue, it starts with Danny's sort of randomly like interacting with Karma, a character that does not appear in this movie, and she kind of manifests this projection of her father, Karma that is, being killed. This kind of sends Karma into a rage, and she nearly kills Danny Moonstar until Sunspot like slaps her and makes her snap out of it. I bring this up because this concept is a big part of the movie. Obviously, Danny didn't do it on purpose, and it indicates that she doesn't have her powers entirely under control. This can be said for some of the characters in the book as well, which is something entertained throughout the series as these youngsters work together to really like find themselves. It was also in this series where Demon Bear first appeared in like later issues. He's an odd sort of villain with powers that seem to sort of make themselves up on the fly. It seems like he draws his power from like these negative human emotions, and he almost kills Danny Moonstar in their first little altercation. If I remember correctly, it was actually Magic, aka Liliana, that killed the Demon Bear. It was also the Demon Bear that was holding captive Danny Moonstar's parents so that they weren't like dead like she thought. Killed by the Demon Bear, that is. This is really all of the detail that you really need as it pertains to the comics in this movie, as everything else I'm going to explain as I'm giving you the review. So you're probably thinking, Eric, it seems like they reference the source material. Shouldn't you be happy? That's what you always gripe about. Not exactly, but I will say this. The New Mutants is not a traditional comic book film. It's not like the X-Men with just young people, though that's essentially what they have been in the comics. This goes the route of a more psychological kind of horror thriller thing, which was a surprising and bold route to take this movie. But considering Danny's powers, it actually is a doable thing and it's a believable thing. you add Demon Bear into the mix and we're ready to rock. So we had a chance to have a different like comic book movie while respecting the source material. But it was completely botched as they had these very unnecessary changes that utterly destroyed some of these characters. I did a video when the New Mutants were announced that talked about that odd sort of race change by way of Cecilia Reyes. The same thing kind of happens to Sunspot. Neither character has fair skins. The actors and actresses that portray them do. The actor that plays Sunspot is Brazilian. He's just like a white Brazilian. I don't expect him to maybe be my color, and Sunspot also has never really had these like kinky hair like mine in the comics, to be fair. So let's just assume that I can let that slide. I imagine him having more so the skin and hair texture of more of like a Ronaldinho. But the Cecilia Reyes thing, I can't let slide. She always has been dark skinned and always had hair like a black woman. She's just of Puerto Rican heritage due to her father. She is black and there are black Puerto Ricans. Yes, she's played by a very fair-skinned actress. I believe Rosario Dawson was supposed to play her, but even that ain't dark enough. I've done a million videos about race changes when it comes to the comic books going into like live action or even in the comic books. But I'm consistent and I don't like it either way. That's my minimum expectation. There are no shortages of actresses and actors. Keep them the same race, of course, if they're human. Hilariously enough, I saw some leftists griping about this, saying these race changes are bad, and that proves my point. They love it when the white character is changed, let's say to black, but would have a fit if it happened the other way around. That's because they're not consistent. However, I am. But believe it or not, that's not the worst thing about Cecilia Reyes in this movie, and we'll break this down later. Let me give you a brief rundown of the movie. So the New Mutants are living in this house that is being facilitated by Cecilia Reyes. She claims that she's trying to help them control their powers, and that's why they're all sent to her. They all have these different events that happen that cause them to be sent there, but most of them don't seem to know the stories of the others, like the backstory. Danny Moonstar is the newest member of the house, and the movie is really, centered around her. And since she's got there, all of the characters have been having these weird sort of nightmares, and the greatest fears are manifesting themselves. They soon find that this is more of a prison, the facility that they're at. We do learn more about the backstories of the characters as the story moves along, and by the end it is revealed that Cecilia is actually the bad guy, and she's working with this SX corporation. And they were being trained to kill the characters, that is, the New Mutants. And they would only be promoted to this more newer facility. And the Demon Bear ends up killing Reyes at the end, which means that the barriers that she has kept up to keep them in that geographical area, they were all gone. Danny makes the bear go away, and then they sort of walk off into the sunset. You know the story now, but let's talk about each character and you'll understand why I'm saying some of the things that I'm saying. I'll start with the general positives, and by positive, I mean the least negative things. The best part of this movie is Ileana. The actress that plays her looks like her, or how you envision that she would look, but she doesn't hardly even act like her. She's there as like this catty white blonde chick, and she's so bratty, man, especially to Danny when they first meet. I guess every horror film with a group of youngsters, they need that kind of chick there, and they just made her that chick, as annoying as she is. Though she uses her powers, and when she does, it's so awesome. It looks really cool. She's like the highlight of the film when she starts to fight the Demon Bear. And though she doesn't defeat the Demon Bear, she's the first to really charge at him, and that's sort of a nod to the books. But her attitude doesn't salvage the worst part about her. But all of her abilities don't really salvage her attitude and the worst parts about her. Now, Sunspot probably acts as close to his counterpart in the comic books, regardless of the race changes. We don't get to see him use his powers much, but when he does, it's fairly decent. He basically has this Human Torch thing kind of going on when we first see him really use his powers. But, you know, Cannonball, who's of course in this movie, wasn't at all believable. Dude like he's supposed to be from Kentucky, you know, growing from this family or coming from this family of coal miners and so forth. But he's just there to just be there for the most part. When he does use his powers, I guess it looks like you'd imagine that it would look, but you can't really tell he's Cannonball if you didn't know that he was Cannonball. But the story is really centered around Dani Moonstar, and much like Cannonball, if you didn't know it was her, you wouldn't know it was her. Yes, there are nods to the comic books, such as this sort of empathic abilities that she has, as I mentioned earlier. Look, I get it. She's figuring out her powers, you know, which you don't really know what they are yet. The movie started with her running away from all of these explosions and stuff, like at the beginning of the movie with her father, and her father like places her near this tree and says that he has to go back and go save his people. She wakes up though after all of that. She like kind of runs away. She falls down and she wakes up in the facility with Cecilia Reyes, and she finds her whole family and her reservation are all dead, as confirmed by Reyes. This movie is about psychological like trauma, right? With all of the characters. That of which she, Dani Moonstar that is, almost commits suicide until Rainey, aka Wolfsbane, talks her off the ledge. Soon as it happened, you know, look, I already knew that the direction that they were about to go in when she talked her off that sort of ledge. But you go watch my video that I did earlier this year when the news leaked that Dani and Wolfsbane, they would be gay and they were going to have this sort of relationship in this movie. Man, they are really, really gay. And it's not just an unnecessary change, it's a stupid one. Yes, the two are sort of close. They share that telepathic connection, or they had in the comics, but they weren't like gay. Wolfsbane is actually Protestant, man. And there was this storyline in the comic book where she actually admits that she assumed gay people will go to hell. To make matters worse, they show her connection to her faith like they do kind of in the books, and she's doing all this weird stuff in the show. She's watching these two chicks, or in the movie, excuse me. She's like watching this movie and these two chicks start kissing and stuff, and then she admits that as she's like sort of doing this confession thing that she you know, she like masturbated multiple times or something like that. I'm watching all of this nonsense play out, and also between her and Dani as all that's unfolding. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Were they just trying to like disrespect Christianity? I really don't know. But it doesn't seem like they could resist themselves, and they just had to place their little fetishes onto these two characters. And they're gay just to be gay. The plot could have been similar, the main plot, and they could have just been really, really cool. But God forbid two chicks be close and not be lesbian, I guess. Cecilia Reyes might be the most criminal part of the movie. So she's working for this Essex corporation, and though Mr. Sinister, of course, is never mentioned, you know that that's who she's working for, as she claims that there's someone that can identify mutants for her, and that's how she knows that Dani is one, though she hasn't really shown her powers. For those that don't know, Essex, you know, that's Mr. Sinister's real last name, Nathaniel Essex. So fair-skinned Reyes is not only a criminal, she's working for Mr. Sinister. She also tries to kill Dani Moonstar going towards the end, because she thinks that she's not going to be of use, considering that she can't really control her powers, and that makes her a threat. The only thing about Cecilia Reyes is her powers and sort of using the defense thing. Aside from that, I have no idea who the hell that character is, and this is much of my gripe with this movie and others like it. Again, I don't expect the movie to be exactly like the comics, but I'm not going to complain if it was. You wouldn't either if you're a normie. This clearly did draw some influence and had a chance to really execute a different styled movie that made sense in a Marvel setting. The story was set. You had a solid idea, so why have these unnecessary changes? The climax of the story was also odd, considering that this damn bear was wrecking shop, and all that happened was, you know, Dani walks and then tells the bear to go away. So the bear goes away. The idea is that that bear, though, she talks about it a little bit growing up in the story, her father told her and all of that, but the bear is like her biggest fear. It's also alluded to the idea that the bear killed her family. That was actually that. They were earlier, in the movie suggesting that it was like a tornado that killed her family. But that's sort of a nod to the comic books again. That was initially what happened. Like Demon Bear, she thought that the Demon Bear like killed her family, and that's fine. They got a recipe there, but they botched it. None of the changes were for the better. In fact, they were the downsides of the movie. These were not ideas used to modernize the characters, make them better or anything like that. And this is my problem that I have with Hollywood and their depictions of comic books, like in comic book characters. Even though it's becoming more mainstream, we're getting more funding and all this is all awesome, but it's like these guys are trying to crap on these characters. These characters seem to exist because the producers and such, they're like egotistical, right? And they just can't bring themselves to like stick to some source material. It's like they have to add their own little imprint on the characters, and they can't do that just by telling a new story. They have to change the characters. This is something that many normies aren't going to even care about because they have zero connection to these characters, as they don't really read these books. They may know of the characters, they may Google Marvel or something like that, but that's about it. But there is absolutely no reason to reach into the books for the sake of a movie, only to have the characters only exist in name. And I see this as getting worse going forward, even though I know this movie has been done for a while. You know, I just see it getting worse. We see the direction that Marvel's going with this next phase, even DC. I've talked about this on this channel when it comes to these live action depictions. It's like the writers, directors, producers, and such just want to leave the project saying that this is what I changed. It's like it pains them to respect the material that predates their depiction of it. So that's really what the New Mutants is all about. That's a basic review. You know my gripes with it. It's a movie that could have been decent. It had a decent idea, but it ended up falling way short of that with its useless character changes that piss people off that know anything about these characters. These aren't the New Mutants, and I don't recommend anybody that's a fan of them actually go out of their way to go watch this movie. But that's going to wrap it up. Sorry about that. I got a little heated, I know. On a positive note, be sure to become a member and join the Discord. Plenty of channels in that Discord. We got great chats ranging from gaming to politics. And we'll also be doing community days where I will game with some of my members on games such as Marvel's Avengers coming up. And before I leave, a lot of people were asking me when they found out I was going to do the review. They were like, what was the experience going to a theater? Well, I'm in Texas, for those that don't know. And though Abbott's punk tail has this like mask mandate and such, I was at a dine-in, like movie restaurant kind of thing. So I had to have a mask because people are eating in there and whatnot. We did have to sit, you had a couple of seats between each person that was there. There was like nobody in like near me. The theater wasn't full, but you can certainly see behind me. I usually generally sit at the front, but behind me, like there's a couple of seats or a few seats between each person that was there. But aside from that, it was the same pretty much experience. But that's gonna wrap it up. Until next time, y'all be easy. Peace.